Now, but someone like James Jones, who's at the opposite end, the wrong end of their leaderboard, is West Ham's women team. Not bottom of the WSL, excuse me. They were bottom of the WSL. It feels like we should be opening this section with in a negative fashion, because they played Birmingham at home last Wednesday, 17th of March, 7:30 kickoff, went 1-0 down. And you thought, here we go. Birmingham haven't been able to buy a win either. We had Catherine Batt on last week from the Daily Mail. It was very, very nervous about what she called a must-win game. Delighted to say that Sandra Brobbey from The Sun, WSL expert and sports journalist, is joining us to chat all things West Ham women tonight. Sandra, West Ham women went 1-0 down against Birmingham, managed to fight back to 2-1, one of their best performances for ages on Wednesday, and then absolutely heartbreaking 94th minute. Just couldn't hold on from the win. I've been banging on about it like a broken record, but a cross from the right again, sails over everyone and knocked in at the back post for the equaliser to make it 2-2 after 94 minutes. It was absolutely heartbreaking. The girls definitely deserved more from the game after Katarina Svitkova's outstanding goal to make it 2-1. What did you make of it?
Yeah, I mean, it is gutting for West Ham. I mean, so close to getting the first win under Ollie Harder in the WSL, and then just for that, obviously, Ruby Mace equaliser. That is very tough on them, because they've been battling. Their performances have been battling recently, and they did deserve to get the win. So, I mean, obviously they've got Man United coming up, but then you've got Reading. So who knows? You'll never know against Man United. You never know what could happen. They could put in a performance there. They could, shock Man United. You never know. So, but that performance is really gutting for them, because they've been working so hard, and I feel they have been improving in terms of what Ollie Harder's trying to do in terms of the pressing, but it's just very unfortunate for them with that last minute goal from Ruby Mace.
Honestly, I mean, they obviously briefly moved off of the bottom of the WSL, went above Bristol City, but Bristol managing to get an excellent point, 1-1 against Tottenham at the weekend, has put West Ham bottom again, albeit Bristol have played 2 games more. We keep stressing that they're just a point above West Ham now, but that win would have put West Ham 9th if they'd have managed to hold on against Birmingham. Honestly, Sandra, I can't describe it. I only just finished work and I've only managed to turn it on when it was 1-1. Katarina Svitkova scores an outstanding goal. We've been crying out for build-up play like that all season long. And I thought, brilliant. That's exactly what the girls deserve. A comeback. This will give them a massive boost. And it looked like they were holding on. Birmingham had next to nothing they were offering going forward, and just out of nowhere, it was a good cross and a nice finish, to be fair, to make it 2-2. But I just couldn't believe it. I was so crestfallen. Do you think that, again, you mentioned Man United at the weekend, they're playing at Old Trafford as well, which would be quite the occasion. But I'll before we go into that a bit more, how do you think that, what do they take from that against Birmingham? Is it positives? Because look, girls, you can do it. You can put the ball in the back of the net, which has been a problem for such a long time. Or is it, we were so close, it's just not going to happen. It's going to be one of them seasons.
I think they can take some positives, definitely. The fact that, like you say, they scored twice. It was only a very last minute thing that, denied them the win. I think they can, take some positives from that, particularly, I mean, obviously Man United will wait and see what happens with that, but particularly when they go up against Reading, they should be more than capable of getting the win or against Reading. So I think they can take some positives for that, and also take positives from the fact that it's so close at the moment at the bottom, and they've got the games in hand. So that's something that you can take positives from going forward for the other games this season.
Sandra, despite all those positives, as you already mentioned, a trip to Old Trafford coming up. Obviously, the magnitude of that game is a lot bigger now, and then they've got the pressures of then having to play at one of the biggest club stadium in the country. I suppose, firstly, sort of having a game at Old Trafford is obviously a great thing for the women's game, but can you see West Ham getting anything from that, given the heartbreaker against Birmingham? It
will be very tough. I mean, you're going to be facing a United side who are going to have the bit between their teeth, because they're loss against Arsenal. I'd be surprised. I'd be surprised if West Ham do win, but then given how some of the games have gone this season, with Reading pulling off a win against United, and then, I mean, I know it's not United, but then Brighton, who were going through a bad patch of form, then stunning Chelsea when they had to, when they absolutely needed to get that win. You just never know what's going to happen. And I think just going back to that performance against Birmingham, the fact, you got 2 good goals on a score sheet, pressing well, were dominating. It was just rotten luck that they just came away from a point. I think that's just something that they can take when they go into this game against Casey Stoney's side on Saturday.
Sandra, there was the new TV deal was announced this week, and how much more pressure do you think that puts on the girls to retain the WSL status? Because obviously that's going to be not only huge for the women's game, but financially for the clubs, it'll be a massive fillet. So does that put extra pressure on the girls to go and get the job done now, particularly in the position they're in?
They may well see it as motivation, just that's something to give them the lift for the rest of the season, to battle to retain their spot in the top flight. It might just be the thing that, okay, we're really going to push on, again, to get as many points as we possibly can so that we can be in the division next term and to be part of, all of that coverage coming up for the WSL. I mean, West Ham are quite a popular side. I mean, it'd be a shame if they went down, but I'm sure it'll give them more kind of motivation, I'd say, more so than pressure, particularly for, players like Gilly Flaherty, who, is quite a heroic figure in WSL generally, aside from what she does with West Ham.
Sandra, what can you, for those of people listening who might not have, well, they would have definitely seen the news this week, but who might not know the sort of details of it, what can you tell us about that broadcast deal? It's my understanding it's a 3-season deal with Sky, around £7 million a year. It's going to be worth to the clubs, which is going to be split equally, or so a portion of it split equally just based on WSL status, and then the remainder will be performance related as well, regarding to league position rather than which games are televised or which aren't. But there's some on Sky. What can you tell us? Where's it going to be? What's the take on it?
Well, BBC have pledged to show 22 of the games. Sky 40 odd, I believe, games are going. Both WSL and obviously Championship. It's the biggest deal in women for a top division. For the WSL in particular, it's seen as the biggest deal in women's football history. No other top league has had such a big TV deal as the WSL now has with Sky and the BBC. And I mean, it's just the general consensus is a fantastic move forward for all the clubs, just in terms of getting that mainstream coverage, both on terrestrial television as well as on Sky, of the Women's Super League. There have been some fans who flagged concerns about, early kickoff times, and obviously that affecting fans who, maybe will be travelling to stadiums when they're eventually allowed back. But the pluses are obviously all that coverage, all that analysis that you may well get on Sky, perhaps a soccer Saturday style, panel ahead of WSL games. It's just a fantastic move forward for the league, for the teams, and for the women's game in general. And there's also the hope that some of that money will trickle down, to teams below the WSL and FA Women's Championship. And it's just raising the profile of the game and helping it to reach a much bigger audience than it already does. So it's a big win for the game and for
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, huge news, great news as well. I mean, obviously the games we've watched this season, the vast majority on the FA player, which can be a little bit clunky. It's not so. It doesn't invite itself or lend itself to something that you just flick over and think, oh, and get interest that way. Is it? You kind of have to go out your way to watch these games. Same the other night with the Birmingham game, of course. But I think the money. Do you think it's going to, one thing, I read an article this week talking about the players it's going to be able to attract as well. Obviously, you've seen West Ham have had an influx of foreign stars this season. That was the road they decided to go down. But with the status you mentioned, it's the biggest league deal, broadcast deal that women's game have got on the entire planet. Do you think with that there's going to be all of a sudden these big stars who perhaps might prefer to play their football in America at the moment or on the continent are going to be going, actually, no, I want to be part of that. I want to be in playing in the WSL where I get my profile out there. It's good for them as far as sponsorship goes and all that sort of thing. And I want to sort of the first step to becoming, a major global star where perhaps they might just be known in their own countries at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I mean, yesterday in a press conference, in the Chelsea press conference ahead of their game with Wolfsburg, that question came up. It was put to Magda Eriksson, their skipper, and she said that, she can, I mean, already, players in her country were talking about how they wanted to, Norway, they were talking about how they wanted to come here anyway, but there is this sense that it's going to be a massive draw for some of the bigger name stars. So you may well see more players of the caliber of like an Abby Dahlkemper, Sam Kerr, big name players wanting to come and play here because of that, because of the profile that the WSL and also the Championship will have. So it probably will be more of a draw for some of the bigger stars wanting to come and play, and for some of the best players wanting to come and play in the top flight.
Yeah, that can only be a good thing for sure. As far as the game goes, and for the fans watching as well, I think. Sandra, there's been some concerns raised around, some of the pitches the girls have been playing on for the past few seasons. There's been several games this year postponed. I think it might have been Birmingham, correct me if I'm wrong, that have had a few problems, particularly with drainage at their pitches, and that's the sort of thing that a big like broadcasting behemoth like Sky, they're not going to stand for that sort of thing, is there? So is it my understanding it's right to say that there's going to be a lot of pressure on clubs to invest in their pitches primarily to ensure that when this deal kicks in that they're ready and there's going to be no hold-ups which you might associate with the WSL over the past few seasons?
Yeah, I mean, yesterday, again, that came up during a press conference, and Emma Hayes was talking about having a minimum standard that, that grounds have to meet, and ensuring that, there are the proper provisions in place to make sure that, the pitches are playable. I mean, obviously you will have days where maybe games might be snowed off just because that you can't control that, but there is going to be a move, I think, to make sure that pitches do meet minimum standards, so you're not getting the postponements due to pitches being waterlogged or sodden and what have you. So that's going to be part of the criteria. And one of the things that came up, one of the things that the FA brought up was having Deso pitches as well, and then obviously
Deso, what are Deso pitches?
High tech, kind of like I can't. I need to look more into this.
I think Deso is the UEFA standard turf.
Yeah, right.
I think
still grass though. Yeah.
Yeah. Right, so basically having Deso pitches used for some, making sure those are in place. But yeah, there is going to be a move to make sure that you're going to avoid the kind of cancellation postponements that we've seen so far this season.
Will we expect perhaps that we'll see more women's games played in the men's stadiums? Possibly.
I mean, you may well see more kind of ground shares when that's possible, if it's logistically possible. I know that some clubs are quite content, like Chelsea are quite happy with Kingsmeadow, for example. I know that's a men's side. They use Kingstonian's grounds and that works well for them, but there may well be opportunities where clubs might move into, use their men's grounds as and when that's seen as logistically viable.
Oh, fair enough. Well, look, good news all round, I think. That 27th, Saturday, 27th of March, West Ham women travel to Manchester United to play at Old Trafford, 11:30 kickoff. It's a big game for the girls, and to pull a James Jones quote from earlier in the podcast, I don't think it's going to be this game that necessarily defines the girls' season, but it'll be really important for them to bounce back next time out away to Reading, which is the 3rd of April. Sandra, we really appreciate you joining us again. Absolutely great news about the broadcasting deal, and it kicks in from next season, am I right?
Yes, it does. Yeah. So maybe we'll see more Emily Van Egmonds and other players of her caliber coming over, fingers crossed, to West Ham.
Yeah, and we'll be able to, all of you guys listening at home, perhaps those of you who don't already, it'll be far easier to watch the West Ham women next season than it has been this, which can only be a good thing. Well, Sandra, thank you very much for joining us. Sandra Brobbey, sports journalist, WSL expert from the Sun newspaper, looking ahead to that game at Old Trafford, Saturday the 27th of March, 11:30 kickoff. Stay with